Hey, what's going on today, guys? It's Trey. Welcome back to the channel. As always, welcome back to sunny, beautiful Germany. Guys, it seems like it has been forever since we have talked. First things first, I just want to say Happy New Year, happy belated holidays to you guys. I know I went off the map there for a minute. I missed you guys. I miss doing these videos. I miss hearing from you guys. I hope all of you are doing well. By the way, if you see me like reaching down at all, or if you see like a little head walking by, or if you see a little figure in the back, no, that's not a ghost. It's not a poltergeist. It's actually my son, Golden. Mommy went to the gym, so it is father-son time right now. But yeah, let's talk. So as you could tell by the title of this video, we did just return from our home in the United States. By the way, if you hear like my boys go in and out or anything like that, I did get really sick while we were in the United States, unfortunately. That sickness did follow me back to Germany. Like my entire family has been sick. My wife, my son, myself, we have just not been feeling good at all. Like and I'll address that later in the video because I think our time in the United States actually has to do with our sickness. But like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So we flew from Munich to Chicago O'Hare. Chicago O'Hare during Christmas time is ridiculous. We spent like a good 3 to 4 hours just trying to get through customs. And on top of that, it was about negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit in the city of Chicago. So it was really cold. Cold is an understatement. It was obviously way below freezing. It was really bad timing because it turns out that O'Hare's train service was down. They only had a few buses running. So basically these freezing cold temperatures made for quite the welcome back to the United States. And especially for this guy who's from Florida here, I was not prepared for it at all. But anyway, we got back to the States, got a chance to spend some time with family, and we just had an amazing, amazing time. Had a great time in Missouri, had a great time in Illinois. Yeah, I just loved it. I did notice a lot of things when we got back to the States that really happened to surprise me, and I want to talk about that in this video. So the very first thing that I noticed when we got to the United States is just how different the infrastructure is in comparison to Germany and Europe in general. So like I said, we flew out of Munich, which Munich, I think, actually has one of the highest rated airports, not only in Germany, not only in Europe, but on the planet. So really nice state-of-the-art facilities and just a cutting-edge airport. Chicago O'Hare, on the other hand, is one of the largest airports on the planet. And in fact, I think it's in the top 5. So comparing Munich to Chicago O'Hare, you're literally looking at two completely different airports, right? So Munich is obviously the 3rd largest city in Germany, but it's not one of the largest airports in the world. So going from there to Chicago O'Hare, I definitely noticed just how different the facilities are. When I travel to airports in the United States, I noticed just how large the airports are. Now, Frankfurt International Airport here in Germany is huge. That is actually a very American style airport. It's one of the busiest airports on the planet. So that actually feels like I'm back in the United States. But once we got to Chicago O'Hare, I knew immediately that we were back in the States. You know, you're waiting in line to get through customs at O'Hare, and it just feels like you're waiting forever. And it's like you're just walking through corridor after corridor after corridor. My wife, son, and I, we walked like a good 2 miles just from our gate to the customs line. Right? And you got to remember, one of the largest airports, one of the busiest times of the year, that line was going from our gate all the way to where the actual customs section of the airport is. So, you know, and that's why it took about 3 to 4 hours to get through. But now after leaving the airport, I also knew that I was back in the States because there's just so much space. And obviously the city of Chicago is the 3rd largest city behind New York City and Los Angeles. It is a massive city, right? So the traffic is insane, but we were pretty lucky because on this day, like I said, it was about negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So nobody wanted to be out in that. But I knew that I was back in the States because the roads, the interstates, the roadways, the highways, they are just all so much larger than what you would find here in Germany and in Europe in general. So I guess we can kind of group that all together, you know, the transportation and the infrastructure. We're gonna bundle that all into one, but that's how I knew immediately that we were back in the States. But then after that, obviously, like, we made it. The very first thing we did was we went to the grocery store, which, as some of you guys know, is a very controversial place right now in the United States, specifically because of inflation. Living here in Germany, we are very lucky because the grocery prices are significantly lower than they are in the United States. And even when I watch German news, there's, a lot of complaints about inflation and about rising prices. I can assure you, like, when we got to the United States and saw some of the prices, I was begging. We were just ready to come back to Germany because the prices were absolutely insane, right? And so obviously we have base access here in Germany, so we're able to shop at the commissary, but still the prices that we saw in the general Chicagoland area were really, really high. And obviously there's places in the United States that are a lot more expensive than Chicago. Los Angeles metropolitan area, the San Francisco Bay Area, South Florida, parts of Arizona, parts of New England. There are places that are way more expensive than Chicagoland, but still the sticker shock that we got when we went to the grocery store was really, really insane. And so like I say numerous times, this is not a political channel, but the grocery prices that we happen to see were some of the highest that I've ever seen. And, like, while we were there, we were obviously watching the news and, keeping up with current events. I've noticed, like, the price of eggs is like $8 to $9 for a carton, which is just absurd, right? And yeah, it's just, I've never seen grocery prices that high in the States before. Now, to piggyback off of the grocery prices, I want to talk about just how different and large the stores are. The grocery stores, the markets, they are so very different than they are here in Germany and here in Europe in general. And so, for example, when I think of stores like Edeka or Rewe or Kaufland, those are all very big stores in hindsight. But when you get to the United States and see stores like Publix, Jewel Osco, Kroger, Walmart, these are all stores that are huge. And for the first time in my life, I remember I was walking through Jewel Osco. For anybody that's from Chicagoland or the Midwest, I know you know about Jewel Osco, one of my favorite grocery stores of all time. But when I got there, man, I was overwhelmed. I'm like, this is a huge grocery store. Thank you, buddy. I'm like, this is pretty overwhelming. And I ended up spending about an hour there just because I wasn't used to being in a place that big, And I remember when I lived in the United States and the first time I went to Jewel Osco, you gotta remember, I'm from Florida, so I'm used to Publix, right? And Cash and Carry, if you remember that store back in the day, Albertsons, Sweet Bay, I'm sure a lot of you guys remember those stores. But those to me were like grocery stores. That's what I was used to. So when I first got to Chicago and went to Jewel Osco and Dominic's, rest in peace, Dominic's, I was like, man, these stores are a little bit smaller, and, like, man, I'm able to navigate pretty quickly. But after living here in Germany for a year and returning back to the States, I've noticed that the grocery stores in the States are huge. Even going to Aldi in the United States, it's just so much larger than it is here in Germany. And so that took a little bit of getting used to, and I'm sure my wife was like, Trey, what's taking you so long? You said you were going to the grocery store. What's taking so long? It's honestly because I was just not used to the size. I'm used to running into Netto or, Rewe or Edeka, which are very, very small in hindsight here in the Stuttgart area. I'm used to running in and out of there very quickly and getting back home. But, there it's just the stores are very, very big. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is just how different the news cycle is in the United States versus Germany. So I'm not a big news guy at all. And in fact, the only time last year that I watched the news was during the midterm elections. And obviously, as all of us know, the United States is a complete clown show when it comes to politics right now. There's a ton of division. The country as a whole is just extremely divided, and you can just see that by watching the news. Now, I don't really like the mainstream media because, like I said, it's just so divisive, and it's also very one-sided. There aren't really too many outlets out there that are giving it to you straight and giving it to you straight from both sides. So my father-in-law and mother-in-law, they had the news on occasionally, and just hearing and overhearing you know, the news cycles, it's just like, man, like, how are people believing this stuff? Because after just literally getting on my phone and like doing a few minutes of research, I'm able to debunk the things that people are saying, or I'm able to say like, hey, you know, I know that this person just said this, but it's not true. Like, here's the actual proven data and statistics that refute what they have said. And so, yeah, I guess that's one thing that has kind of remained the same since we have moved here to Germany, is the US news cycle is the same and full of division and sadness and anger and, you know, negativity. I don't really see that living here in Germany. It doesn't really exist, at least that I've noticed. So I have to admit, living here in Germany has been quite the relief, being able to escape the massive news machine that exists in the United States. It has been such a relief to be here where we haven't experienced that at all. Now, to piggyback off of the news, I think the one unified message that I saw between like Fox and CNN and MSNBC and all these different large mainstream media outlets, the one reoccurring theme that I noticed is that there was definitely a heightened sense of xenophobia. And what I mean by that is the main point of discussion right now in the United States is the southern border. You know, there's a ton of migrants looking to enter the United States. Like I said, this isn't a political channel. I'm not gonna get into that at all. You know, I think the United States is obviously a country that is made up of immigrants. I will leave it at that. But yeah, I noticed that there was a lot of sort of built up fear and anger surrounding the southern border. And it actually became pretty unbearable to watch because, you know, they were like interviewing American citizens and asking them how they felt about it. And just like hearing the reoccurring themes of like, oh, they're gonna steal our jobs. There's gonna be increasing crime. You know, there's gonna be increased sexual assaults and like all of this fear, you know, surrounding immigration. I just felt like on every single outlet that I watched, that was like the reoccurring theme that I heard repeatedly. And it really made me sad because, right, it's the holidays and like these immigrants that are coming here, they're coming to the United States to create a better life for themselves and for their families. And I think if people actually took the time to look at the statistics and to look at crime and to look at education, you know, you'll find that immigrants are some of the hardest working law-abiding citizens in the country. That's a fact. That's not, you know, me just spitting off the top of my head like that. You just take a few minutes to look at the statistics in the United States and you will see that immigrants do so much good for the country versus the supposed negative, you know, that the media talks about. And so, yeah, you know, I could obviously talk about this topic for hours, but I want to save you guys time. But man, just the heightened sense of xenophobia. I hadn't seen anything like that since I'd probably say 2016 through 2020. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, this is not going to come as a surprise really to any Europeans, and it shouldn't come as any surprise to any Americans, but I definitely noticed an increased amount of violence taking place in the United States. Now, I know some of you guys are gonna be like, well, Trey, you were in Chicago of all cities. Like, just look at the crime statistics, look at the news cycles, look at, you know, all of the incarceration rates, look at the poverty, look at all this stuff that has just made Chicago a vacuum, right? And, you know, while some of that is right to an extent, I'm talking about nationally. I feel like everything that I had been hearing in the United States while I was watching the news had to do with violence, right? There's actually a rumor right now that there's a serial killer on the loose in the city of Chicago. There's about 50 plus people that have gone missing. And it's just a really scary time to be in the United States right now. There was a guy, I want to say, who was in Idaho who killed a few people and went on the run. The police stopped him, they let him go, they stopped him, they let him go. And eventually he ended up being caught. But I just noticed that there was so much violence, gun violence, political violence. There's just, you know, the United States has always been a violent place. I'd say that the violence has definitely increased since we've been here in Europe. So the last 2 points I want to talk about are actually positive points. So I know we talked about the negatives, but I do want to talk about the positives for a second. The first thing I wanted to say is, while the United States has sort of spiraled into violence and anger and frustration, I will say that a lot of people were really friendly while we were in the United States. TSA, random travelers, the lady at the grocery store, like everybody was just nice and very communicative and very friendly. And I thought that it was really inspiring to see. So like I said, I come from Florida, right? A place where people just aren't genuinely too friendly, but something about being in the Midwestern United States, just people are so nice and so friendly. And I would say that everybody that we met was so nice. I didn't see anybody being mean to each other. I didn't see like any road rage. People were just nice. And this, you gotta remember, the holidays is a very stressful time of the year, but it was just really nice and reassuring to meet some really incredible people. And yeah, I loved it. I loved it so much. The final thing I wanted to talk about is just how amazing the food is in the United States. I have missed it so much. So obviously we were in Chicago, got a chance to have some Chicago style deep dish, which, so good, so good. I can rant for days just about how amazing the food is in Chicago alone. But we just got a chance to try some of our favorite foods from the grocery store. We got a chance to go to Trader Joe's, which is arguably my favorite grocery store of all time. We went to Whole Foods, went to Jewel Osco. I miss US grocery stores so much, right? Like obviously they're very overwhelming from a size perspective, but just the offerings that they have, man, it just makes me very nostalgic, and it does really make me miss home a lot. The food is just amazing there. Now, to piggyback off of the food, I actually think the reason why we got sick is because we have been sort of indoctrinated into the European standard of culinary and of cuisine and of diet, I guess you can call it. And so the US obviously has very loose standards when it comes to the food. And that's why a lot of food that comes from the United States is banned in certain parts of the world. So I totally get that. I totally understand that. And I really think that's the reason why we got sick. I had a sinus infection. I had pink eye, had a sore throat, was coughing up blood, just, really sick. And even my son today, he was blowing his nose and I noticed there was some streaks of blood in there. It's just, we got really sick while we were in the United States. So I know I said I wanted to leave on a positive note, but I just had to mention that they're putting something in the food that is very different than what they're putting in the food here in Europe. And I think that once you sort of leave that bubble of food in the United States and come to the European continent, you will notice immediately, right? So yeah. So thank you guys for sticking around for this video. I really love the United States. I can't say that enough, but man, I was ready to get back home to Germany. I love it here. I can't tell you guys that enough. It's just such an amazing place. I've missed all of you guys. And while I love the food and, I love the English language and, I love the comfortability and comforts that living in the United States can provide, I wouldn't sacrifice being here in Europe and being here in Germany to experience those easy things that I've been used to. So we've got a really big next couple of days. I'm actually having a life-changing surgery performed on Monday. I'm having back surgery, which I've been looking forward to because guys, I'm in a lot of pain. Like I say, constantly lift with your legs. When you mess up your back, it really changes your life. So I know it sounds pretty grueling, but I promise you it's gonna make a positive difference in your humble narrator's life. So I'm really excited for that. My wife's dad is coming this weekend, which I'm really excited for. And yeah, it's 2023. Got a lot in store this year. I miss you guys. Like I say always, if you guys have anything that you want to ask me or anything that you want to talk about, please leave it in the comment section below. I'm gonna link my Instagram as always. Hit me up in my DMs. I miss you guys so much. Thank you. Mahalo for watching.